When have you taken off your nostalgia goggles and realized something you liked as a kid was not as good as you remembered? Chuck E. Cheese. It was the pinnacle of fun as a kid. As a parent, the games are awful, the prizes are cheap crap, and the pizza is subpar. Whenever I can muster up the energy to take my kids, I always hope to see a brawl break out. I rewatched Indian in the Cupboard a few years ago with a bunch of friends because we wanted to watch old movies all night. Swore it was my favorite movie as a child. That movie was butt trash. Felt embarrassed for even suggesting it. I watched one of those Casper the Ghost movies that I loved so much as a kid and then realized how stupid and terrible it was. It made me sad. Power Rangers. The emotions I felt watching that as a kid were a freaking roller coaster. The tension, anticipation, the battle, the overwhelming concern for the characters' well-being in both aspects of their lives, love interests, the freaking drama. It's great to watch my daughter get so into it. Also makes me cringe to realize I watched a freaking soap opera with spandex. Yeah, I'm still a big wrestling nerd. Disney Channel movies shows. I was watching TV and one of the newer ones came on. And I thought, this is so crappy. Shows in my day were much better. A few weeks later I see my favorite childhood Disney family movie on demand. Made it maybe 15 minutes in. It wasn't the way I remembered. The original Halloween Town still holds its own, I think. When I was a kid, Cece's Pizza was like visiting the Holy Land. So much food. All the pizza, dessert pizza. I went there as an adult and found the place to have this really depressing vibe. The pizza was okay. I guess the place looks like it has a glorious spread when you're barely taller than the counter and too blinded by the arcade to pay much mind. I'll give Cece's this much. Their buffet is fairly priced for what you get, which is aggressively mediocre pizza, and those cinnamon rolls are delicious when they're fresh. When I was a kid I absolutely loved this candy called Wonder Ball. It was a hollow chocolate ball with different things inside. Sometimes it was stickers, tattoos, rings, but my favorite were the ones that had more candy inside. They discontinued them years ago and it made me so sad. About a month ago I was at Walmart and saw them and I freaked out and bought like 5 of them. I was so excited when we got to the car and felt just like I was 4 again as I opened it. And then it was gross. The candies were horrible. Their flavor was bad, as was their texture, and the chocolate was super cheap. I was horribly disappointed. RIP my love of Wonder Balls. My mom tried to tell me. There was this show called Dinosaurs, basically the plot of Transformers but with alien dinosaurs, that played on the USA Network when I was a kid. I loved it. Last year while drunk I remembered it randomly, so I took to YouTube, saw that the whole series was uploaded, and started watching. Reddit. My nostalgia goggles failed me. Even my drunk goggles failed. It was terrible. The animation, the jokes, the dialogue, everything was bad. I stopped watching after a few episodes. This happened to me with Captain Planet. The dialogue and cool factor is just a downer to try to approach as an adult. Gaia is still hot, though. Sonic the Hedgehog Saturday morning cartoon. Sonic is far more annoying than I remember and Tails is insanely childish. I still like it, but it's not as great as I remember. CHILLYDOGS. GoldenEye for N64 was so influential and I spent countless hours playing it as a kid. Holy crap, does that game play like garbage now. Most N64 FPS games are garbage. Tried to play Turok and couldn't get past the first level. The Pagemaster, 1994. I just watched it for the first time yesterday after 15 years. I remembered it having an amazing story with great animation and an inspirational soundtrack. I fell in love with the characters and would often imagine myself in that world interacting with them. It wasn't my favorite film, but it was certainly up there. But after yesterday, I realized it was a bad attempt at trying to get children to read. Didn't even know that was the plot of the film. Man, I haven't thought of this in a long time. Given my response to the OP was that non-Disney animated films did not hold up, I'd probably feel the same about this. Christopher Lloyd can do no wrong in my book though, so I kind of want to watch it again and see though. LOL. One time my roommate and I went to Golden Corral for dinner and needless to say it was lackluster. Everyone there was kind of creepy too. She got food poisoning. I just didn't have any fun. I don't understand how kid me loved it so much. As kids we never noticed the creepy clientele and their bad table manners. We were just too focused on the unlimited deserts. I was in Staples today and saw Trapper Keepers. Those things were the crap when I was a kid, but my god, they're like a piece of freaking furniture. No wonder I have back problems. I'm having the opposite experience right now. I'm rewatching Batman, the animated series, and seeing that not only does it hold up, it has so much for adults that flew over my head the first time around as well. B. TAS is widely accepted as excellent by almost everyone. That show and the many animated films DC put out, Mask of the Phantasm for me, were some of the best Batman stuff out there. R.L. Stein. I absolutely worshipped his books until maybe 7th grade. I am in my 2nd year of college and was so excited when I saw they had a few of his books in the back, but when I started reading one I couldn't make it past the first chapter. It was just so simple, I don't know how to describe it. Needless to say I was disappointed. I saw my then boyfriend, now husband, go through all 5 stages of grief in about a second when he finally found and got to eat his old favorite candy bar from his childhood. He had grown up for a while in Israel, loved to get elite chocolate bars. He had very little money and it was a special treat to buy for himself. Just a regular candy bar. He was always a chocolate lover. One of those people who really appreciates it. I am not one of those people. From his candy bar days, he grew up and lived in France and Montreal for many years and became a genuine connoisseur of the finest products. But still, when he came across a place that happened to sell Israeli groceries and they had this cheap candy bar, he was over the moon. I should add here that, in Israel, they make the chocolate a bit differently, adding things, I assume, so it will be less likely to melt in the heat. This makes the cheap chocolate taste, well, cheaper. He was so excited that day that he didn't even wait to pay for it. He just tore it open and took a bite. The look on his face was so perfect as he came to realize that this thing he had loved was total crap. He said it might be the worst chocolate he ever had. I almost got a Wonder Ball today at the store since I haven't had one, or even seen one, since I was a kid. Your husband's reaction to his candy makes me think I made the right choice when I put it back on the shelf. Staying in a lake cabin without air conditioning during a summer heat wave proved not to be as much fun as remembered. Even the lake water couldn't cool us down. I used to think Lizzie McGuire's wardrobe was so amazing and cute. Now I cringe. Most of it looks tacky and dated and the outfits all clash. The 2000s were not a good time to be an adolescent girl, as far as fashion goes. Not to mention some of Miranda's bizarre hairstyles. Spaghettios. It was a Saturday morning ritual to eat the kind with meatballs, sometimes even straight out of the can without heating it up, and watch cartoons like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Jackie Chan Adventures, etc. A few years ago I saw they were on sale, so I decided to get a couple cans, opened the first, heated it up, and couldn't even finish it because of how disgustingly sweet and processed and all around awful it was. Ended up throwing the other can away without ever touching it. As a kid I used to like to put Spaghettios on buttered bread and eat it like a sandwich. I can't even tolerate white bread anymore. I can't imagine what Spaghettios are like. The 4 Kids dub of Cardcaptor Sakura was my first anime. I love the dresses and Sakura's friends, but I can never go back. The dub is objectively horrible without that childlike innocence on my side. I was 8 or 9 when the Phantom Menace came out. It was a process for me to realize that it was not actually considered a good movie. I still can't hate the prequels because I loved all the Star Wars movies as a child, but I can see for myself now where parts of the movies were really not at all good. Anakin as a character is kind of just awful. Recently, my friends throughout high school and college, we had a massive falling out, but I still look back fondly on our friendship. Only recently realized that they actually treated me like crap. Glad to be rid of them now. I think a part of maturing after high school is realizing who you were really friends with and who you were trapped in small room with for 8 hours a day every day of your life for 13 years. In my case that answer turned out to be none of them. The seaside. Had a real It's Always Sunny moment when visiting a beach I used to go to as a child. Manky Beach full of glass and poo, and the residents were a touch uncouth. Also there was this massive shop with loads of cool beach stuff that I was fascinated with as a kid. Now I can see it's all bad quality overpriced crap. I'm sure the behavior of other inhabitants and the quality of recreational products wasn't of much concern to me as a child though. Makes you think. The Land of the Lost from the mid-70s. I watched the series again a few years ago in my late 30s, and while it is not nearly as awesome as I recall from my youth, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. The early 90s remake? Still crappy. Sonic Heroes. That was a childhood classic for me. I mean I'm still technically a child as I'm 17 but you know what I mean. I'll still play it, but the dialogue is really cringy at times. Knuckles. We're not going there are we? Sonic. Yes we are. Or, Sonic. Too cool. Or, Big. Insert any of Big's lines here. Or, some character before the final boss. Some cheesy statement about teamwork. At least Team Chaotix has this gem. Vector. After Espio has gone invisible and he's kinda just left with Charmy. Ah crud. Did I forget to pay the rent? Or something along those lines anyway. You leave Sonic Heroes alone s. But really every character says I'll take it from here. Jimmy Neutron. The older I get, the weirder the show looks. Garfield. Not the movies. Okay, also the movies, which in retrospect are letterbox filler, but the comic strip. For the longest time I purchased every new Garfield book as it came out. Eventually I started noticing there were fewer funny ones than I remembered. Then I thought back, and the ones I remembered weren't as funny either. Garfield minus Garfield however is downright hilarious in kind of a cynical way. When I was little I loved the movie Swiss Family Robinson because I had good memories of watching, on VCR of course, at my grandparents' house. I just watched it the other night and it is super uncomfortable, lots of overt sexism and then the whole fight over Roberta. As a kid I noticed none of this, but it was hard to watch because it is just so bad. Honestly never seen the movie, but I've been to the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse at Disney World and still love it. My family all thinks it's boring as heck. When I was around 4-5 years old, I used to be a typical girly girl. I wanted to become a princess. I loved glitters and I refused to wear anything else than dresses, because pants were for boys. So when my parents got me some Barbie VHS tapes in which she got to be a princess, I was super psyched. I remember watching Barbie as Rapunzel, Barbie in the Nutcracker and Barbie in Swan Lake all the time. I specifically remember the dancing from those films. I used to be a ballet girl, because what else? And I always imitated their moves. So recently I decided to download them so that I could watch them again with my sister. And spoiler alert, they were bad. The animation used to look super real to me at the time, but it's actually kind of ugly and stiff. I guess they could have been worse and I still have some tiny nostalgia goggles, because come on glittery dresses, but they weren't quite life goals for me anymore. You should watch Barbie, Life in the Dream House. I'm a straight guy in my 20s and I would willingly watch that. Animation is good, and there's lots of unexpected pop culture references. I think Star Wars is the most common, but I've also noticed references to 2001. A Space Odyssey. There are non-sci-fi ones too. Those are just the ones I remember. Sadly, old James Bond movies. We put on The Spy Who Loved Me thinking the kids would love it. Ski chase scene. Jaws. It was so bad. Cheesy dialogue and surprisingly boring. We only lasted about 20 minutes. Space Jam. When I watched it as an adult, I couldn't believe how I had overlooked the poor acting and predictable plot, but I was a kid and watching the Looney Tunes with real people on the screen was awesome. Full House. I mean, I still like it to a certain extent, but when I was a kid, I watched the entire show 7+ times through Nick at Night reruns. I used to absolutely love that show, but now I can see some of its failings. The TV show Doug was terrible, boring, simple, and dated as frick. 7-year-old me would run away in tears if I said that to him. That theme song got stuck in my head every time. Quest for Camelot. I loved that film as a kid. Probably because we didn't own it, so I could only see it when it happened to be available from the public library. Dear mercy, is that a crap film? The protagonist is everything wrong with girl power characters of the 90s. The love interest is so bland. The dragon may be the single most annoying side character in children's animation. The villain is cliched to the point of being hilarious. The only thing that holds up is that My Father's Wings song, which still makes me cry. Cap'n Crunch Crunch Berries. I love that stuff, even in college. It's like super saturated, sugar-coated razor blades these days. All that on Nickelodeon. Yes, even the earlier seasons. Tried to go back and watch some episodes and good god that show is garbage. Except for vital information. Lori Beth Dinsburg forever. I imagine this will be a common one. Movies. I remember Jurassic Park being about 5 hours long, with the scene where the T-Rex chasing the car lasting about half the running time. Everything seemed much less epic and involved on a recent viewing. It's the same with Homeward Bound. The characters in that film are wildly less developed than they are in my memory. I switched it off halfway through revisiting it some years ago. Our childhood mythologizes things. Sometimes it's nice to leave it that way. Things you can outrun dinosaurs in. 1. 4-wheel off-road jeeps. Only barely though. 2. High heels. Honestly, Disney World. I begged my husband to use his bonus money from re-enlisting so we could take our son on vacation to Disney for a week. Totally different experience when you're the parent. It was suru hot and we tried to fit in way too much into our week, not to mention as a kid you don't realize how annoying it is to buy a $12 crappy pretzel or a $15 Tyson chicken nugget basket from the concession stands. My son had a blast, so it was still worth seeing his reactions. But definitely not how I remembered it. Those ballpoint pens with 10 inserts of various colors. Impossible to write with, but I didn't care back then. I also remember having something like a lead holder but with many 1cm bits of crayon-like lead that you could insert into the holder. Might be remembering incorrectly. This would have been in 2001 or so. The Emacs CRTs, the Magic Mouse, the pre-iOS Apple in general, but I still feel warm inside when I see them. Voltron. I had this idealistic memory of how awesome it was. Watched it at 30 years old. Holy crap, it was garbage. My attention span as a child was clearly pretty limited. A bunch of old Nickelodeon shows. Hey Dude is really terrible. Rocko's Modern Life is a lot stiffer than I remember. I can't believe my parents let me watch Ren and Stimpy. Pete and Pete is cringy, but watchable. On the flip side, Doug, Rugrats, and Clarissa Explains It All are just as good as I remember them being. The first Age of Empires game. It holds a special place in my heart, but seriously, the sequel improved everything that was wrong or missing in that game. When I was a kid I saw bits and pieces of a fantasy movie about a young girl who goes into a fantasy world for this magical MacGuffin that prevents aging or restores youth so that she could keep her grandparents from having to move to a nursing home. I had these fairly clear memories of the climax when she battles the evil witch to retrieve the magical peaches, but something goes wrong, and she has to face some life lesson about aging and death. Basically, picture a cross between Labyrinth and Cocoon. I kept vaguely remembering it and wanting to see it again. I finally found it on Netflix sometime in the last 10 years, and let's just say my childhood memories were very kind. It was so bad that I don't even remember watching it, just some flashes of the cover. The memories I've kept are still the distortions of childhood. That's probably for the best. The Confederate flag. Never even thought of it as the Confederate flag but as the rebel flag. Lived in the southern US from ages 3-6 then back to the northeastern US. Growing up the rebel flag meant nothing about the Civil War. Just a representation of the South, Krispy Kreme donuts, walking barefoot in the rain, kickball in the yard, exploring in the empty lot next door, and all those childhood memories. Later I had a watch that played Dixie, a rebel flag shirt, and a rebel flag on my dorm room wall in college. It had nothing to do with race, or politics, or anything like that. It was a symbol of happy childhood memories and a false image of a magical place. As a child you don't notice the bad, you just remember the good, and after we moved back north we didn't hear about the bad things about the South, like Gov. George Wallace, but the good things that we missed. So, I had a lot of nostalgia for those early years and the flag was a reminder of them, but only for me. It has much different meaning for most everyone else and I would never consider wearing it on a shirt or displaying it now. The South and that flag have long ago lost their charm. Besides, we've got fresh Krispy Kreme less than 100 miles away now. At least Krispy Kreme holds up. Knott's Berry Farm. I loved going as a tween and I have fond memories of coming to age there. Fast forward to today and it sucks. You have to wait an hour in line to buy a soft drink. The employees are really scarce and don't want to be there and the quality overall has really tanked. Vienna sausages. You know, those little canned weenies? I ate them all the time when I was little, with ketchup. I bought some for my son one day thinking he'd like them too. I tried one. That crap's gross. I don't encourage him to eat them anymore. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.